The realization struck me like a bolt from the blue, creating a stark contrast to the ordinary rhythm of my life. Just 3 days prior, I had been swept into a whirlwind of guilt, responding to a desperate call from my mother, whose voice trembled with emotion as she painted a vivid picture of their struggles. She told me that Dad needed medication they couldn't afford, bills were piling up, and they were facing the grim prospect of not making it to the month without help. Out of love and concern, I sent them $800, more than I usually would, driven by the urgency in her voice and the fear that they might truly be in dire straits. I thought I was helping, providing a vital lifeline to the people who had raised me, who had taught me the values of hard work and responsibility. However, as I pulled into my driveway after a grueling 12-hour shift at the warehouse, the weight of that decision began to unravel in a way I never anticipated. My neighbor, Mr. Jenkins, was outside watering his petunias, and in a casual conversation, he mentioned that my parents were off enjoying a cruise in the Caribbean with my sister, Laura. My heart plummeted as I processed his words, disbelief washing over me. How could they be on a lavish cruise when just days ago they had pleaded for financial assistance? The shock left me momentarily speechless, and as I stumbled into my empty house, the ringing in my ears echoed the sound of my world collapsing around me. 3 days ago, I had sent them money believing I was making a difference in their lives. Now, I was faced with a harsh reality that my generosity had funded their vacation in the Bahamas. A quick check on Facebook confirmed my worst fears. There they were, all smiles and laughter, captured in photographs that felt like daggers to my heart. My mother wore a sundress I had never seen before, and my father was sipping a fruity cocktail, as though their financial woes had never existed. Laura, my sister who had never held a job, flaunted her extravagant lifestyle funded by my hard work and sacrifice, her carefree attitude mocking my efforts to support them. As I scrolled through the album, gathering evidence of their deceit, I felt my stomach churn. The timestamps on the photos matched the exact moments they had claimed to be too sick to answer my calls, and the geotags revealed expensive restaurants and luxury excursions, all made possible by the money I had sent. My hands trembled as I uncovered more disturbing details. My mother wore a gold bracelet I didn't recognize, and my father had a new watch adorning his wrist. They had indulged in shopping sprees in Nassau while I believed I was their safety net, their financial savior. The final blow struck when I read the comments on one of Laura's posts, where my parents expressed gratitude for the generosity of their children, implying that I was included in their joy when, in reality, I had been deliberately excluded from their happiness. A deep sense of betrayal washed over me, numbness setting in as I processed the gravity of what I had discovered. A darker emotion that had been festering for years bubbled to the surface, and I felt as if I had been a pawn in their manipulative game for far too long. Desperate for clarity, I dug deeper into my bank records, hoping to make sense of the situation. The automatic weekly transfers to my parents had been consistent. $600 every Friday, a routine I believed was keeping them afloat. But now, I could see a disturbing pattern of manipulation. Every plea for help had been timed perfectly with their lifestyle choices. Every emergency a carefully crafted scheme to extract money from me. I had unwittingly become their personal ATM, providing support while being denied a place in their lives. Their calls always coming just before holidays or weekends, conveniently aligning with my paydays. My girlfriend, Anna, had noticed the patterns long before I did. She had pointed out that my parents always seemed to reach out during crises, just when I was in position to help, but I had defended them, blind to their manipulation. It took this gut-wrenching revelation for me to confront the truth. When Anna found me sitting in the dark, clutching my phone and drowning in despair, she comforted me as I finally broke down. The tears flowed freely, releasing years of hurt and frustration, echoing the truth that had been buried beneath their lies and deceit. The next morning, I found myself driving to my parents' house, a confrontation I hadn't planned but could no longer avoid. As I drove, memories flooded back, moments I had dismissed in the past. Times when my mother had called crying about bills while I had seen her flaunting new purchases online. Each memory intensified my anger as I realized I'd been played for a fool, manipulated into believing I was the one helping them when, in fact, they were taking advantage of my compassion and trust. When I arrived, Their facade of innocence crumbled the moment I walked through the door. My father's surprise quickly morphed into annoyance as he realized I knew the truth. The conversation was tense. I confronted them about the lies, about the vacation they had taken on the back of my hard work. Instead of showing remorse, I was met with defensiveness. My father dismissed my feelings outright, claiming I wouldn't have fit in on their cruise, as if that somehow justified their deception. That was the moment something inside me broke. I pulled out my phone and canceled all automatic payments right in front of them. The panic in their eyes was palpable. They were losing their financial safety net, and for the first time, I felt empowered. As I walked away, they followed, pleading for me to reconsider, to give them another chance. But I was done. I drove away, leaving their voices behind me, filled with promises and apologies that felt hollow and insincere. The fallout was swift and painful. My parents, along with Laura, reached out to family members to paint me as a villain, the ungrateful son who had abandoned his parents in their time of need. I switched my number, cut ties, and distanced myself from the toxic narrative they were weaving. My bank account, once drained by their constant demands, began to grow, and with it, my sense of relief and newfound freedom. As the weeks passed, I adjusted to my life without their manipulation. I started planning a future that was mine, one unburdened by the weight of their financial demands and emotional blackmail. I secured a therapist to help me navigate the guilt that lingered, learning to recognize the emotional fog they had cast over my life. I began to understand that their crises were not my responsibility, and that love should never come at the expense of my well-being. Months later, I learned through the grapevine that Laura was struggling, and my parents were downsizing, still spinning tales of betrayal to anyone who would listen. But I no longer cared. I was building a life with Anna, who had stood by me through it all, offering support as I reclaimed my sense of self. We became engaged, planning a small wedding surrounded by those who truly cared about us, without the presence of my parents or Laura, who had chosen to prioritize their narratives over our family bonds. What I learned through this experience was profound and life-changing. Love without respect is not love. It's manipulation. Financial abuse can occur within families, and the people skilled at pushing your guilt buttons are often the ones who installed them in the first place. I discovered that setting boundaries is not selfish. It's a necessary act of self-preservation. I learned that genuine love uplifts rather than drains, and that walking away from toxic relationships can be a powerful act of self-valuation, allowing space for healthier connections to flourish. To anyone who finds themselves in a similar situation, know that it's okay to prioritize yourself. Breaking free from manipulation is not just possible. It's essential for your mental and emotional health. While the journey may be difficult and filled with moments of doubt, the peace that comes from reclaiming your life is worth every struggle. I have never felt happier, finally embracing a future that is truly my own, free from the shadows of guilt and obligation that once loomed so large.